An evening in 1865 at the University of Ghent in Belgium, inside a room sat the 36-year-old doctor of chemistry, Dr. Friedrich August Kekulet. Tired from a long day at work, he was trying to figure out the chemical structure of benzene. He was still thinking about the problem, visualizing the molecules in his mind as the sound of the city became more and more faint and he slowly gave in to the inevitable sleep. The molecules that he was visualizing at one point transformed into snakes in his mind, dancing around as the thoughts turned into dreams. He was still faintly aware when he discovered that one of the snakes had curled into a circle and bit itself in the tail. Then suddenly he got it. He understood at that moment that the molecule of benzene had to be ring-shaped. This was a big deal at the time. Dr. Kekulet was the first who had proposed that molecules could be ring-shaped. The structure is even named after him, Kekulet structure, and he is also considered to be the founder of the theory of chemical structure. And interestingly, he himself was mostly asleep, dreaming when it happened. Hi guys, welcome, my name is Dave. Today's topic is intuition as it relates to knowledge. This is the first video about knowledge on this channel. In this video I'm going to ask the question, how does intuition relate to knowledge? Are intuitive thoughts knowledge? Must we view them as beliefs or as mere ideas? This video will be listed in a playlist called Building My Worldview. This is not an educational channel and all my videos are opinionated. I assume you guys have at least some prior knowledge of the topics I discuss. The background picture is from the forest near my home, where I used to walk my dog. The area bears clear evidence of being carved out by forces of the ice during the last ice age. The ground consists of soft layers of stone that is squeezed in between hard ice. Here, this has created a series of shelves with lush vegetation of mixed forest and vertical drops with sheer cliff faces. Some of them are popular with amateur climbers. One can also see evidence that these ledges have been used for animal grazing not long ago. There are no very old trees here, and there is too much grass in the vegetation for it to have grown naturally. The valley beneath was urbanized with shopping center and apartment blocks in the early 70s, but before that, this area was farmland. I also want to mention that you can adjust the playback speed of the video in the little toot wheel that will pop out if you place your mouse marker in the bottom right of your video window. The story of Dr. Kekulet's discovery of the chemical structure of benzene is a brilliant example of intuitive thoughts leading to great discoveries. I could have chosen many different stories, and I'm sure you guys have some examples of helpful intuitive solutions from your lives. Another great example is the story of Archimedes' discovery of displacement in water, also called after him Archimedes' principle. The list is long. Although I have had the idea of this topic in my mind since before I started the YouTube channel, what made me make it now was a video on Paulogea Live's YouTube channel on the 19th of August. He responds to a Q&A video on Dr. Chip Bennett's YouTube channel called Ask Anything, Popular Christian YouTubers. Chip Bennett's guests are all heavy hitters on the apologetics Christian YouTube scene, Whaddo You Meme, InspiringPhilosophy, and Trinity Radio. The question on Dr. Chip Bennett's YouTube channel that Paulogea is responding to is this.
What's your best argument for us having free will?
For my answer to this question, you can see my video Non-Determinism number 1 makes more sense. What I'm interested in today is the answer Michael Jones from Inspiring Philosophy gives.
From the philosophical side, we need to remember that free will is intuitive. It's our starting point. We start with what we intuitively believe, and the skeptic of something, say like consciousness or free will, has to provide evidence that our intuitions are wrong on this. If I'm wrong, the skeptic needs to show me why my intuition is wrong. It's not my job to show that my intuition is true.
So the question I'm asking is not whether Michael is right that we have free will, but if his reasoning about intuition is sound. I agree that intuition is our starting point, but then he goes on to claim that it's not his job to disprove it. I disagree strongly with this. Since I found this clip on Paulogea live YouTube channel, let's have a look at what Paul's answer was.
The trouble here is that my intuition is that we do not have free will. So now Michael and I are merely in competing intuitions. I feel like intuition is one of the worst ways of knowing things. Theists seem to think it is the best way of knowing things.
Paul is one of my favorite YouTubers, and I warmly recommend both his channels. Paulogea, as a determinist
like myself,
points out that his intuition tells him that we don't have free will, while Michael believes that accepting Jesus is a choice, intuit that we have free will. Both intuitions aligns with both parties' prior beliefs. To investigate whether intuition can be considered knowledge, we need a definition of knowledge. This is what Wikipedia says about it.
Knowledge can be defined as awareness of facts or as practical skills and may also refer to familiarity with objects or situations. Knowledge of facts is often defined as true belief that is distinct from opinion or guesswork by virtue of justification.
I want to emphasize this distinction between just belief and justified belief. What is described here is often referred to as justified true belief, or JTB for short, where the controversy are about what kind of justification is needed. I find it a bit strange that the true part is in there. I mean, if one believes something, it goes without saying that one believes that to be true. This is true whether the belief is justified or if it's just a belief. For my part, I think I will go with the definition, a belief that has been sufficiently justified. So for now, I have the first stage, which is guesses or opinions, then beliefs, and finally sufficiently justified belief at the top. It is tempting to add criterions for what kind of justification I think is needed, but that would have been just my opinion then. In academic studies, the first thing one learns is the method used for that field. Here one learns what kind of criterion is needed to make a positive claim for something to be called knowledge within that field. But I'm not an academic, and I don't really aspire to become one, but still I think it's important to have a usable understanding of things. Where I would like more strictness also outside of academia is for internal consistency. If you set the bar at some point, you should not allow some things to pass exemplary because it's comfortable and leave something out just because it challenges your existing worldview. There is a whole list of biases that can occur in this process. The most acute type here might be confirmation biases. Some scholars do think the lack of defeaters, as Michael Jones mentioned in his answer, counts as justification if the intuition also aligns with prior accepted knowledge. I don't. We must be careful not to let this kind of belief be used as building blocks for further knowledge. I do, by the way, think that intuition is our best tool for creating hypotheses. In ancient Greek times, there were 4 words for knowledge. Episteme, which was unchanging theoretical knowledge. Techne was expert technical knowledge. Metis was strategic knowledge. And gnosis, which was personal intellectual knowledge. The first hypothesis I will explore is that intuition comes from gnosis. In Christian times, it came to mean spiritual knowledge. I believe this is due to Platonic influence on early Christianity. Plato's view on intuition was that it came from our connection with the idea realm. He, in this way, relates intuition to gnosis. When Christianity became the major religion in the Eastern Roman Empire, they kept the word gnosis, but the idea realm from Plato was now understood as the spiritual realm. So now intuition was understood as knowledge obtained from or given by God. In this perspective, intuition is, as Plato also believed, more true than empirical knowledge from direct observation. In the last video I talked about Descartes. Descartes shared Plato's view, and in his book Meditations on First Philosophy, in the first meditation he introduced us to the evil demon thought exercise, where he cast doubt on the objectivity of our sensory experience. But for some strange reason he dismisses the idea of a deceiver God. Instead he claims in the third meditation that, I quote,
I now seem to be able to lay it down as a general rule that whatever I perceive very clearly and distinctly is true.
And he goes on to say that without this knowledge of God's existence, none of his knowledge could be certain. This is called the Cartesian circle. The critique of Descartes has been formulated in Wikipedia like this.
1. Descartes' proof of the reliability of clear and distinct perceptions takes as a premise God's existence as a non-deceiver. 2. Descartes' proofs of God's existence presuppose the reliability of clear and distinct perceptions. Many commentators, both at the time that Descartes wrote and since, have argued that this involves a circular argument, as he relies upon the principle of clarity and distinctness to argue for the existence of God, and then claims that God is the guarantor of his clear and distinct ideas.
When I made my video, I speculated that this might be due to alternative reasons from Descartes, but as it turns out, he doubles down on this point later, and it is, in my opinion, quite strange. Anyway, life goes on. The perspective that intuition is truer than observation is alive and well still today, and seems to flourish within Christian apologetic circles. In my first video about the brain in a vat, I introduced you to Seitan Bergenkate. Here is a clip from him in his debate with Matt Dillahunty.
You've said that God reveals things to you in such a way that you can be certain.
To everybody.
Well, for now, we'll just stick with you.
Well, I say he reveals things to everyone such they can know.
I understand that.
That's what I say.
How is it possible for God to reveal things to you in such a way that you can be certain?
Because he's God. God can do that.
What about babies?
What about them?
Do they know that God exists?
Yes, they do.
You don't have to go very far down the street to find somebody who think you need the Holy Spirit to interpret the Bible. Is it really so different in principle? Also, I think the belief that one can derive knowledge from the spiritual realm is the driving engine behind New Age type of beliefs and the contemporary spiritual movement. This isn't really a Christian phenomena, but it is related to religion in general. At least someone must have been in contact with something outside reach of empirical study for it to turn into a religion in the first place. My opinion is that intuition is more related to the modern philosophical understanding of the Greek word episteme. I will call this the episteme hypothesis of intuition in contrast to the gnosis hypothesis of intuition that I have talked about so far. This is what Wikipedia says about episteme.
In philosophy, episteme is a term that refers to a principal system of understanding, such as scientific knowledge or practical knowledge. The term comes from the ancient Greek verb, epistemi, meaning to know, to understand, to be acquainted with. The term epistemology, the branch of philosophy concerning knowledge, is derived from episteme.
The same way that episteme is a system of understanding, one can also, in my opinion, say that each of us have a personal episteme that to a larger or lesser degree aligns with the episteme of the group we identify with. I imagine that the personal episteme is a central part of our worldview. What I think is happening when we use intuition to assess what is going on, so to say, when interpreting a new observed phenomena or a problem, is that we let our personal system of understanding and prior knowledge dictate how the phenomena should be interpreted or a problem should be solved. The intuitive interpretation is the one that creates the least cognitive dissonance in our already accepted structure of knowledge. That is not to say that intuitive thoughts can't lead to change in our prior system of knowledge, but I believe that it is the solution that leads to as little change as possible. Remember, intuition sometimes works fast when the solution comes to us seemingly at once, or slow when we ponder about something that we don't find a solution to for a long time, before the solution seemingly suddenly comes to us, sometimes even while we're thinking about something completely different. In these cases, it feels like the intuitive thoughts comes to us from somewhere outside of our mind. But it is strange then that the accuracy of intuition largely increases with expanding knowledge on a subject, like was the case with Dr. Kelemen, and that intuitive solutions to problems are shown to differ depending on which culture one comes from. We think of it as intuition when the thoughts are related to new phenomena or new problems that need solving, but I don't think intuition is principally different from the skill that we are using to navigate every day of our lives. As an example, driving a car in traffic is a very difficult task. Still, an experienced driver can navigate through city traffic while at the same time having a conversation with the passenger. Take a moment to think about that. How many decisions a driver is making second by second, solution and what actions to take constantly stream into consciousness dynamically and are executed. This all works fine as long as nothing unpredicted happens on the road. But as I said, it takes several years of practice to master this. It's not like it comes from some parallel dimension automatically. If it is true, if intuitions are the solution to problems that aligns the most with prior knowledge and that causes the least cognitive dissonance, like I think it is, treating intuitive thoughts as knowledge would lead to an endless series of self-confirming circles within our worldview. I think it is especially dangerous if one thinks like Descartes and Plato that intuitive thoughts are more true than observations of the external reality, especially if this is what one is taught from an early age. According to Professor Deborah Kelemen, 2004, I quote from her article, Are Children Intuitive Theists?
Young children have a broad tendency to reason about natural phenomena in terms of purpose and an orientation toward intention-based accounts of the origins of natural entities.
I will leave a link to the article in the description. Further reading from the article reveals
Evans, 2000 to 2001, has found that regardless of the religiosity of their home background, children show a bias to endorse intentional accounts of how species originate. 8 to 10-year-olds from both fundamentalist and non-fundamentalist American homes favored creationist accounts. This preference was also found in 5 to 7-year-old children's agreement ratings for animate and inanimate entities. It was only among 11 to 13-year-old non-fundamentalist children that divergence from the theist position emerged.
Make sure I don't quote mine and go and read the article for yourself. Let me know if I have misunderstood something. If children are taught from an early age that intuition is God or some other spiritual being talking to them, and that intuition should be trusted as reliable knowledge, and even in many cases that it is a punishable offense to question them, the risk is that they will pile one intuitive interpretation on top of another, with no evidence, no critical thought, and even with a systematic disregard for actual observations. In short, full-blown science denial, like we see in flat earthers and other conspiracy theorists, spiritualists, and Seitan Bergenkate. So now that I have thought about it, I think Michael Jones' perspective on intuition is not only wrong, but potentially harmful. I think he himself is fine, he has a vast knowledge base from philosophy to draw from, but he is spreading a message about intuition that potentially can influence others to enter a circle of self-confirming beliefs and reality denial. Again, I think it's harmless to believe in free will if one knows that this is a theory of mind and not a hypothesis about how the universe works. I do think this is what Michael means. I am here only talking about his view on intuition. In the video, I have laid out 2 hypotheses for where intuitive thoughts comes from. The Gnosis hypothesis for intuition is an understanding that intuitive thoughts comes to the consciousness from outside sources, especially from spiritual or divine beings. The episteme hypothesis for intuition is an understanding that intuitive thoughts comes to consciousness from a pre-conscious internal processing of the information within our brain, probably comparable to the processes that goes on with perception. I have argued that I think the episteme hypothesis for intuition is true, and that the Gnosis hypothesis for intuition is not only wrong but potentially harmful, and especially if it is conveyed to young children. I love to be right, and that is the reason I urge you to correct me if I'm wrong. This counts for all my videos. Please write a comment below or contact me with some of the contact information I provide in the description. Especially I hope to hear from you if you think I have said something that is factually wrong. Wikipedia should be sufficient sources for most of what I'm saying, but if you struggle to find sources for anything, please let me know in the commentary section and I will get straight to work providing it. Thank you for the view and have a nice day.